Not a static wire.
So did you hear this? What do you guys as the opposite?
Huh?
Because actually the forces, they came down, what do you understand? And the business idea. It's all fluid. So in the Niqaab you get really hot, so you have some air conditioning system inflated inside the Niqaab.
Whoa.
Inside the program.
Let's get some girls on the Hijab.
How does the word jalabi turn into jilbab?
I think it's from Jalaba. It's the plural.
Jalabi. Oh, okay, that makes sense. Because in Surah Ahzab, verse number 59.
Jalabi.
Yeah.
What's your name, brother?
Oh, so you know Surah Ahzab.
Yeah. Okay.
Resemblance.
Brother-in-law.
No. So you picked his brother.
Oh, brother.
Can you see the resemblance?
Yeah, that's not, man. That's the resemblance.
I know from 59 to 73, because they have some very interesting ayahs. Because 59 is the verse of Hijab. 71, 72 forms khutbah hajjah, part of khutbah hajjah. Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu taqullaha wa qulu qawlan sadida.
Okay, if you've managed to get enough reasons down and answer those, 5-minute break, walk about, stretch, tug, whatever, and we'll start at 20 past. Yep. One person, just a point, who's going to stand up, couple of minutes, summarize the issue, and give their answer. One person from each. Yep. What's Vice President next year?
You should think about it.
Are you for president?
I think you need to reconsider what you can go for, Hamza.
What do you mean?
If he could be
What you would go for treasurer?
Are these the ISOC elections?
Yeah.
Why don't you want
Because I'm probably going to be too controversial. Politically opposed a lot of stuff currently. I'm saying, I'm going to do this, and it will just polarize everything. So it's probably best I don't make me stand for it.
What's your opinion on sisters doing books?
I think it's really good.
Yeah.
I'm for it as well.
Yeah, we got a lot of stick for not allowing sisters. For even proposing the idea.
Rightly so.
So the zero classes were supposed to be right half for sisters, half by brothers, but because of certain things. But alhamdulillah, now this is have a fat of backings.
No, we just have to make sure that
Is it from the ISOC?
Huh? I can't say it's from, but yeah.
It was from the
sort
ISOC.
of thinking
So
exactly.
change it next year. There's arguments on both sides. This is not probably this kind of a proposal.
I mean,
My preference is that it should be okay. But I know I've heard the debates that they say about mixing and the shadow and the Prophet encouraged.
yeah.
To be honest,
we should encourage that. We shouldn't try
Yeah,
to
to be honest, I don't know how viable that is, because of again the snippets of text that we don't have a full scenario of how the society was. We have to reconstruct that.
contextuality.
Yeah. No, I mean,
I think we do.
We have enough for separation.
Oh yeah.
No, not between the. I know the wives.
Generally, there's a logic which I think emerges when you scan all of the text together.
No.
I'll touch on it when I summarize this section.
no, but the main
What
evidence.
may be a picture that emerges.
Was it?
That's a nice way
Is
of
it a hadith?
explaining
I
it.
remember reading about. I forgot if it's a hadith or from reading from a book. The Prophet said that the men should be on the sides or
Yeah, one side of the speech.
Yeah. So see, I have an interesting idea about that. See, the fact that he said that they should be on the sides, not completely distant away. And if you think about it, this is just something I've just thought of. That is, if you look at all the concentrated schools of same sex, you've got Darul Ulooms all across for females and males, and you have high homosexuality and pedophilia cases in both of them, right? And it's just thinking in my mind. See, the Prophet
Is that contemporaneously or is that historically?
Actually, I don't know.
Is contemporaneously post 1924 are there other factors now going on? Because before that you had generally Islam from all perspectives.
Yeah.
Post 1920s, after the Ottomans or after the Mughals, other values coming in and ideas, and are those the ones that are contributing towards that phenomenon?
Yeah.
If it's continuous, then I'd say it's an interesting point.
I don't know. That'd be an interesting thing to check.
If it isn't, then you can say maybe it's external influences.
Yeah. I mean,
It doesn't seem to be a historical problem.
pedophilia.
The homosexuality and all this kind of stuff as a known
Yeah.
It's a bit more contemporaneous.
I think maybe it's been given more exposure. That's why there is. Because you also have to compare.
Expect to see, by going to the judicial records, this person's cried out with me, or whatever, claims, allegations, you'd expect to see some phenomena recorded in some way in literature or in courts or...
But the thing is, with technology, you have to be very careful. I mean, people are saying the rate of cancer and stuff, the rate of obesity is increasing. It is increasing, but when you're looking at evidences and stuff like that, you have to understand that the people who are collecting the data are actually getting better at collecting the data. More and more people are getting reported as... So to say 1 year, X amount of people were identified as homosexual, and then next year it was like 5,000 more. How do you know that there's not another 50,000, but they're just not declared?
Yeah. So you can statistically deal with that, can't you, by saying there's a certain percentage, and we can correlate a certain percentage that won't speak if it's illegal.
But extrapolation like that is always prone to error.
You can include an error from percentages, can't you? That there's a percentage error as a way.
And then you've got the whole thing about it being socially acceptable, and then you've got laws and stuff forbidding it. These will come into it, and they have to be taken into account when you're extrapolating and forming conclusions like that. So I think it makes it a bit difficult.
Okay, so let's start with the group at the back, the controversy and how you would deal with it.
We think the most controversial one was the...
Hang on, just whilst you're doing that, all the other groups, just a series of questions, listen to it, how you would critique it, how you'd attack it if you were a non-Muslim.
Yeah.
They're defending something you believe to be right, your allegations. Okay? Off you go.
Yeah. We think the most controversial one was the Niqaab.
You think the most controversial was the Niqaab, okay?
Firstly for security, obviously you can't tell who somebody is, but I've heard like in airports they'll get a female to check her face, like in a private area, and they have no problems with her.
So the Niqaab is a problem, it's a security risk, airports, wherever there's security issues, the Niqaab causes problems. And their solution is, have an area where you check the face. You don't have to ban the entire thing, do you? Okay?
In health and law, for example, in a doctor's surgery or in the courtroom, body language, you need a face to see body language, like to see if somebody's lying or whatnot. So you can't really do that with Niqaab. I don't know so well.
Okay, so many health areas, many areas where you need to see the face for communication, the Niqaab prevents you seeing the face. What example would there be where they need to see the face?
In a courtroom.
In a courtroom they need to see the face, and you're not sure how you would address that.
When they testify.
Yeah, when they testify.
And also, if your doctor is a female wearing a niqab, when you're communicating something with her, you want to see her reaction, and it'll make you a lot more forthcoming if she's very welcoming.
Okay.
Okay.
Those are the controversies. How do you deal with them?
You had a good one for the doctors. The doctor one, as a GP, I know that you can request all female patients. So if you had all female patients, you can tell them to come in, and once they're in, you close the door and you can take off and
So you don't have to then wear the Niqab?
yeah, exactly, and then you just go straight back up again once they leave.
Okay. Any comments, observations? Sure.
I'd say the idea of the body language is definitely important, because especially in when they study ethics in I think medicine, I remember one of the medics mentioned that you have to have that the confrontation between patient and doctor is very, very important, sometimes more important than the actual therapy or the treatment itself, because it gives the reassurance to the patients, how the person, etc. But also because there's a Niqaab debate on the URN, University Radio Network, and Sister Basma, she went through a lot of different students to try and get different people's opinions, and she mentioned that the Hijab, the Burqaa, it can be a health issue because of hygiene.
The Burqaa or the Niqaab?
That's in the Niqaab, sorry.
Niqaab,
It
okay.
can be a health issue, And for that, if the state regularizes that you cannot have a face covering while you're operating inside the hospital center, then it needs to be taken off. I mean, that's what, because of the sake of hygiene. And I mean, that for me makes fair sense. I would agree with that.
Okay, so you're saying they should take it off in certain contexts?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll support that.
All right, thank you. Next group.
Okay, what was the controversy?
What's the controversy and how do you respond to it?
Female rights. That's an argument that's always posed when looking at Burqaa and Niqaab.
It's a right to wear what she wants. Female right is ours.
I mean, they say women are oppressed by, because they have the assumption that they're forced to wear the Niqaab or Burqaa and have an idea that it's through oppression. But you always find that at the forefront of all these arguments, it is men who are leading the debate. It's not women who have an issue with the whole situation. So it is. So if you look at it really, it's men shouldn't be dealing with women's rights, so it's the same that women shouldn't be dealing with men's rights. So there's a bit of an issue that it's men that are bringing it up, and it makes you think, why? For what reason do they have an issue? Is it really because they think women are oppressed, or is it because they don't want that society because of their own values?
Okay, so you're saying the controversy they're raising is that women are oppressed, their rights are being suppressed, and it's primarily men in the West who are raising this concern.
Yeah.
You're saying that's the issue of the controversy, okay? And how do you respond?
Basically, I put exactly that it's a men that raise this concern.
Or it's just men, who are you as men to raise it?
Yeah.
So if a woman was to raise it, and there are women who raise it, feminists, who say that these women are oppressed, our sisters, even some Muslim feminists, that this is oppressive. It's a very male-dominated religion. They force these women to wear it. They're taking their rights away. How do you respond to them then?
Well, their main argument is that women should be allowed to dress how they want.
They should choose.
So their argument supports the burqa and the niqab. Anyway.
Yes, for those women who choose to wear it, they're supporting it. But what about those who say it's a symbol of oppression?
Sorry, say that again?
For those who say it's a symbol of oppression.
Against the hijab? Against the hijab.
Against the niqab word, against maybe any of them. That charge can be applied, that these are symbols. Very symbolic.
How
Women have a second-class status.
do you define the symbols?
The symbols are the hijab, the burqa, the jilbab, the niqab.
How do you define that as a symbol of oppression? It is cultural values. It might be a symbol of oppression or something else. I'm just totally define something.
Excellent.
I think it actually liberates females because you aren't being judged for your beauty or how you look. It's more, then you can be judged for your intellect and your character.
Okay, if you wear hijab, do they still judge you by your beauty? Isn't your face visible?
Yes, but yeah, okay. Sure.
Okay.
Okay.
So
You guys.
the other issues have basically been discussed: communication and the security. The thing I'd like to raise about communication is the fact that the niqab prevents proper communication, whether it be body language or whatever. The opposition I have with that is that distance learning can take place without you even looking at the face of your lecturer or whoever's teaching you or whoever's communicating with you. Actually, a lot of the material that I have to go through is available as podcasts, slidecasts that you listen to or you watch on the video, and it's just lecturer's voice and slides moving. So that's the point of communication being addressed. Security, I haven't got
Okay, so the controversies are communication, security,
segregation,
segregation,
and
oppression.
and
Also, you caught all four.
Yeah.
Okay, four controversial issues.
Yeah.
The communication, you don't need to see face to face. Many examples where you can communicate without that. Shoaib disagrees. Let's bring him in.
And actually,
One moment, let him say his objection.
Okay, so I mean the example that you have illustrated is for teaching. Okay, fair enough.
Yeah.
I agree. You don't need to see the face, but I think for social interplay to be able to, especially when you're having a debate or dialogue or other forms of communication such as media, journalism, etc., and documentaries, I think facial recognition is quite an important interplay to have. I disagree entirely that with that connotation, unless it's just from a purely teaching perspective. Yeah, fair agree. You can do online degrees. So apart from that, I don't think that's applicable.
But then you're imposing restrictions that haven't existed before. I mean, some scholars say that you don't have to wear the niqab, but all of those scholars still acknowledge that niqab is actually part of the religion. And I'm not saying that this is my opinion, but to impose that restriction, you're going away from the teaching of Atil Allah wa Atil Rasul, obey Allah and obey the Messenger, found in Surah Nisa, verse number 59.
You can't just take that and then generalize it.
But this is a command from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
No, you can't say that. You cannot just say
Okay, the verse says, obey God, obey His Messenger.
Yeah. Yeah.
How does that support your argument?
Yeah.
Because you're putting restrictions that weren't there initially. So you're saying for this, it's not allowed. But who are you to do that? That's what I'm trying to say.
Sorry, I didn't understand.
Yeah.
Did anyone catch
You
that?
said-
He's saying he's questioning who's the authority to be able to say what is this or what is right or what is wrong. What
But
can
if Islam allows a woman to wear
hijab,
hijab or the face covering or not to wear it,
Yeah.
then that's
now,
not.
if it's causing a problem, she can just not wear it. Or if she wants to wear it, don't enter certain areas. There's no Atiullah to Rasul here, is it? It's not an obligation that she must wear it.
These are opinions, by the way. This is
There are
still-
some scholars who say she must wear.
Yeah.
Okay, let's put that aside for a moment.
Yeah.
For those who don't follow that, who think it's a good thing to do, I would like to emulate that.
No, but they still say that it's part of the religion. It is still part of the religion.
It's part of the religion,
And-
which is fine,
and-
but it's a choice element,
but-
a
but
recommended
this is what-
aspect.
but this is
So
what
if she
I'm saying,
chooses,
like, if you're
not
taking
to-
it out of a religion, then it becomes a problem. So if you say that this is not part of a religion, that's where the problem comes in. And then that's why some people can extrapolate from what Shrek says and basically say it's not part of a religion.
No. I've never.
No, I said extrapolate. They will basically say, from you saying that it's not allowed here, it's not allowed, you shouldn't have it here, you shouldn't have it there, people will start to say, it's not allowed here, it's not allowed there, blah, 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 and that's it. And we'll see it taken out. And I think that's why we've seen a decrease in the amount of people that are actually wearing niqab, because they actually think that it's a cultural thing. They don't think that it's part of a religion. It is a part of a religion. It's not, the major opinion is that it's not obligatory upon everybody, and that's also my opinion. The other issue is that it's a symptom of, or as you said, a symbol of oppression.
Sorry,
What-
did you get that point? I didn't get that point.
it didn't make
Yeah,
sense.
did anybody get that point?
We'll talk about it later.
Okay, let's just go on
yeah,
to finally to the oppression one before we move
so
on.
it's a symptom of oppression. So people would say that you wearing, that someone wearing a niqab is being oppressed. My answer to this question would first be a question. So of all the things that people are oppressed by, you pick the niqab. The issue of domestic violence, for example, is far more severe than niqab. And it is covered, but it's not covered with the scope that the topic of niqab is covered. And actually, this is a problem that is actually in our households. And if we don't draw attention to topics like this, you are actually going to allow people to get oppressed by focusing on little things that actually, for the vast majority of people, are not a symbol of oppression. The final thing I wanted to say was the issue of segregation. The people who wear niqab, they're seen as segregated from society. And the simple response to that would be, by preventing them from wearing the niqab, you're actually segregating them from society by making them remain at home.
Yeah, interesting.
So
Sure.
the second point that you mentioned, that we have bigger concerns like domestic violence
Yeah.
rather than fulfilling the niqab. The thing is, there are still problems.
No,
You cannot take one over
I
the
addressed
other.
that. I said that the vast majority of the people who wear niqab do it out of choice. They're not forced to.
But then that's not an argument then.
Because you seem to be saying, we have a problem of some sort, but look, why are you focusing on this? It's a small problem. There's a much bigger one of domestic violence. Surely you should be sorting that out before you get onto these trivial type of
But the domestic
smaller
violence
problems.
thing covers more of the whole power game sort of thing.
Okay,
that
I would
exists at
respond
home.
if you were to use the argument that there's massive amount of legislation, assistance, refuge centres, support, legal aid, structures put in society to deal with domestic violence?
Much more than the
What structures are there to deal with women who wear, or are forced to wear, or even choose to wear through rebellion or some misguided understanding this stuff, which causes problems in societies? What is there? Surely a debate should happen and stuff should be put around it.
It's
That's
true,
what they would respond.
It's true, but
It's true. Okay, so you agree?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. You're with the oppressor.
I just would like to add something about the oppression that probably the West talk about. Now, I'll probably say it's the other way around. It's the women who wear revealing clothes are the ones who are being oppressed. That's how I see it, because
How's that? Explain that. Interesting point.
it's because when most women who wear revealing clothes are not wearing it for themselves, they're wearing it for other people. So it's like it's like a form of slavery in a way. Well, mostly for men, anyway.
It's an excellent point. Many thinkers, many writers have identified, Virginia Woolf in her book, loads and loads of feminists, that many women in this society don't doll up in makeup, they don't dress in certain ways through choice. It's almost they feel that they have to do this because there's a whole marketing industry, there's a whole attitudes that have been created in society that judge them by what they look, by their beauty. And it's pretty much men who dominate the marketing, advertising, these whole industries who contribute towards this. So women are actually oppressed who are living in this society, and to then allege a woman who chooses through her faith or whatever that she's oppressed is questionable. Now, if there is a problem of some women who are forced, there is legislation, there are laws that can deal with it. That if you're being forced to do something or being beaten or abused in that process, there are laws already and prosecute those people. Why do you need to ban the entire thing? What's the logic? It's like saying that some criminal, and this is almost their argument, that this guy ran off wearing a burqa, a criminal escaped. Well, if that's the case, a criminal who uses a ladder to escape from prison, are you going to ban all ladders? A criminal once caught a taxi and escaped from an open prison, you're going to now ban taxis? Isn't it? It's a bit of an illogical, irrational approach to ban entire hijab or burqa because some women or some people use it or abuse it. But there's an interesting, more wider contextual aspect which none of you seem to have picked up on this.
Would you ban it on the grounds of security, national security?
I wouldn't, because the security issues are very exceptional. Like a prisoner using a ladder to escape. If a guy uses it to escape, you don't ban the entire thing, do you?
No. So say for example,
National security, like at airports or whatever, you had...
Or let's say for example, the argument can be presented of, because we cannot see their faces, if one of the terrorists does decide to use that as a disguise, they have a bomb underneath and it goes boom, kaput, we can't actually then...
identify that person.
Yes, so on that basis, how much validity or what would you...
Okay, I'd say it's like using a steamroller to crack a nut. Would you ban motorcycle helmets? Would you ban balaclavas? Would you ban facial coverings, partial facial coverings like beards? Or glasses, sunglasses? It becomes a very heavy hand you're having to use and banning a lot of stuff just to deal with something which is actually very exceptional. And there's no guarantee that this will actually allow you to identify the culprits, is there? Just because now you can see everybody's faces, well, they can wear disguise, there's a whole series of things they can do. But there's another interesting angle I thought would be useful just to mention to yourselves. We talked about contextualization earlier. There's a slightly broader context argument that helps making sense of these dress codes, which nobody seems to have really touched on. The points you mentioned were generally good, no problem. Islam's philosophy or thinking seems to be, if you scan all the texts, that when men and women are living in society, Allah doesn't seem to have a problem with women working, giving talks, dawah, learning, studying, engaging, participating in society. Men are required to do as well. The problem seems to be that Islam is saying that we need to deal with is when men and women mix, you don't want in every location the sexual element to kick in. The kind of like flirting, passing of notes, winking, and all this kind of stuff. So if you're in a classroom, you're there to study, you're there to learn. So there shouldn't be notes being passed around, I love you Abdul, or I love you Fatima. This kind of stuff shouldn't be going on. It's distracting. So get rid of the distraction. Either you separate them, women at the back, men at the front, women at the side, men at... Or they need to cover themselves so things aren't hanging out, where a guy walks in, he's about to do a lecture and he can just see a woman plastered in makeup. Yeah. If you go to the marketplace, you go to town, you go to buy stuff, you go shopping, you're not there to buy sex or to get. If you go into a theatre, you go into a hospital, you go to a court. If you want sex, get married, behind closed doors, husband, wife. That's do what you want. And the ayah are blatant about it. Approach your women like a field, like the harf. When a farmer approaches a field, he plants seeds. That's the metaphor Allah uses, and we shouldn't be really embarrassed to talk about it, it's Quranic verses. Allah uses that as a metaphor to say that you can do that, Allah's given you plenty of permission, made it easy, and His rahmah's there. Do it within the marriage, where it's clear, agreed, who has what's rights, duties, responsibilities, when does it count as abuse, when doesn't it? The rules are agreed between the couples. The consequences are agreed. If I have a child, whose child will it be? What duty does a father have towards in terms of food and clothing and education, at what age? And all that is agreed in something called the Act of the Niqaab, T's and C's. You would never set up a business without agreeing it. You'd never get married, a complex interaction which has consequences without agreeing and being clear. You do that within marriage. Outside of that, you get rid of anything that will excite people, that will get them moving in this direction. You're not meant to do that. Dress codes is one piece of that puzzle. Flirting, lowering of the gaze. Women walk on one side of the street or another, or different times, societies, cultures will vary. I don't think there is a fix. There are hadiths where the Prophet encouraged the women to walk side by side on the roads, on the far edge, the men are in the middle. But the logic seems to be to prevent the mixing, which allows that kind of stuff to occur. So that's a broader context within which I think the dress codes can sit within. If it is leading to problems, you can encourage it. If it's not, you can reduce it a little bit, but there will be a certain minimum standard that is expected, which Sharia has legislated. Okay, another chestnut, apostasy. Yes, sure.
I just want to ask, what are your thoughts on lowering the gaze? Or
lowering the gaze is
in a contextual setting.
Oh, okay. In a contextual setting, within the setting, you can look. It's not a problem. There's hadiths where the companions would come, or the Prophet would look at females. Females would look at the Prophet or the companions. There's a hadith where the Prophet ﷺ forbade a companion who had glanced and he was glancing again, and he says the second glance is forbidden for you. The first is fine. It's not saying a second glance per se is haram. It's saying you can have multiple glances, that's not a problem. It's the glance of lust which is forbidden. And there are other narrations which touch on it. So if you're looking at a woman the first time with lust, or the 10th time with lust, that gaze now becomes haram. You should not do. Lower the gaze. But if you're transacting, you're negotiating, you're kind of as a doctor trying to explain something, as a teacher or as a tutor, you can look. As relatives, you're sitting and talking. It's not, I'm looking at the sky and I'm chatting to my cousin. It's kind of like a bit weird in terms of a social interaction. The look is permitted. It's the glance of lust which is forbidden. That's my take. And that kind of makes sense within this whole thing, that the glance is trying to stop that. Yeah. Okay, thank you for the question. Apostasy. You've all probably no doubt heard about satanic verses, late 80s, Salman Rushdie, attacking the Prophet, the Danish cartoons. That was probably more my youth. This is probably your youth. It was the Danish cartoons, where they were describing the Prophet in unfavourable terms. And around the world you had a lot of demonstrations, violence and such like that kicked off from it. But one thing which was heavily discussed in the media, Khomeini's fatwa, they discussed that heavily, was why should the one who no longer wishes to remain a Muslim be put to death? There are examples of the Prophet ﷺ, hadiths, where he put people to death. Throughout Islamic history, they've been doing it. Books of jurisprudence over 1,000 years, books of fiqh, Islamic law, they talk about it and they're all pretty much consensus. Those who leave the deen should be killed. There are some debates within that, but that seems to be the general pattern. How would you explain to a non-Muslim this aspect of Islam? Why should you kill the one who chooses to change his religion? Isn't there a verse of Quran, La ikraha fid din, no compulsion in deen? So you Muslims are okay with them coming in. Oh, no compulsion, embrace it, we'll debate with you, discuss and show you how nice we are, cups of tea and halal rice and all that. But as soon as he's in, you've locked the door, you bolt it, you're not now getting out, you get out, it's a sword, and now suddenly is, oh my God, I can't leave this religion. What's going on? Can you make sense of this? Who wants to have a go? Does anyone think they can? Does it make sense to any of you? It doesn't. Sure.
I think with regards to apostasy, you have to understand when Islam was a state itself, it was like you committed treason if you left the faith once you established yourself as part of the religion. But there was a case of a companion when the migration towards Abyssinia did happen, because it was a non-Muslim state. He never got stoned for apostatizing. So there is that flexibility there. I think it's within, just like a country, if a soldier ever commits treason to the country, he can never return to the country. He'd always have to live outside of it.
Why is it treason you just simply don't believe in God anymore?
Sorry? Yeah,
Why
this is where
you think you lose your faith, you don't believe anymore? How is that treason? How is your security affected by what I believe or
yeah,
don't
this
believe?
is where it's, personally I have a dilemma with this apostasy. That's where I'm always trying to think about, trying to get my head around, but I haven't come across
So people think that because you've changed your faith, you're going to actually start preaching against Islam. It's an assumption, but it's there as a reason.
Change your faith, you go to... Oh, it's an assumption, is it?
No.
So on an assumption we can kill somebody?
No. It's what Zakir Naik said this. And I don't know, I haven't looked at any scholar, I haven't seen any scholars say it, but he said that it's basically the fact that you preach against. So I'm basically assuming it might have something to do with that.
Okay.
I'm not sure about the full answer.
It's not answer, it's a question. You know, you said that the history we've done this kill apostate. What are the political reasons behind it? I know the case of they stop paying zakat, you have to fight them. So if you stop paying zakat, you have to fight them. If you stop paying zakat,
Paying of God.
Paying
Zakat.
zakat.
Oh, paying zakat.
Even though
Okay,
that's
I'm
not
really sorry.
apostasy.
I thought I said payings of God. Paying zakat, that's why the wars of Abu
Even though
Bakr.
that's not apostasy, but yeah, what are the political...
Okay. I'd say a good way of maybe having a go at explaining it is there are some difference of opinion within it. Scholars are generally agreed that the apostate who changes his religion after he embraces Islam should die. The context is quite important. We live in a context, a secular society, where religion is not part of the political establishment. So there's no Christianity, no Judaism, no priests. It was historically under the feudal system, and a capitalist is businessman. Within this society, when you hit puberty, what religion you choose to follow, whatever you find convincing, is a personal choice. No bearing on society at all. But imagine you lived in a society, and the Ottomans had this, it was very famous, the millet system, that when you hit puberty, you now had to make a choice. And that was going to be very significant. It was going to have a bearing on your entire life, what faith you chose.
Even if you're born in a Muslim family, you have the right to choose.
Oh, of course, because at some point, you're going to have to make that decision. Because it was going to now have a bearing in terms of who you could legally marry. You had to testify, because then you would now live within the Muslim community. The Ottomans, the millet system, divided the communities into a Muslim one, Christian, Jewish. The Christians were allowed to appoint a patriarch, a religious person who could manage, administer their society. Christian courts. The Ottomans gave them the authority to manage all that, apply their laws, rule, judge, marry, divorce, according to their system. The Jews had something similar, and so on. The Muslims had something similar, the Sharia. So when you hit puberty, you now have to choose. If I steal, do I want my hand amputated in the Muslim courts? Or do I want the punishment of the Christians, or the Jews, or the Hindus, or whatever community? Which way of life do I want to follow? When I marry, do I want to marry Christians, Hindus? If you want to marry a mushrik, you can't then say, I'm a Muslim. They will not allow you to marry that person in this courts. You get the idea? That's the context.
So say for example, if you decide to become mushrik, even though you're from a Muslim family, just imagine per se, you would still have the same rights, etc. Nobody would kill you if you apostatize.
I'll come to that in a moment.
Okay.
So the baseline is this choice, this thing designation was quite important. And based on it, you had some loyalties to the state. Now, if you've made your designation and then you want to now change, between the other religions, you could do that, no problem. They could even become Muslims, no problem. If now you were in the Muslim fold and you wanted to now change that designation, because when you said, I'm a Muslim, the expectation was you are convinced. You've researched it, you've looked at it, it makes sense to you, you've had all your doubts addressed. The schooling system from 7 till 12 would ensure that was done as well. You had all the information, so at puberty you can make an appropriate designation. Yeah? Now, if later you have doubts, you suddenly change your mind, people would sit with you, convince you, what doubts do you have? They'd address it. Remember, the Islamic thought or the conclusions are certain. Now, if you have any doubts, they can normally be addressed. Ultimately, if you don't want them addressing, you don't find them persuasive, and you switch to one of the others, you are left alone. And many scholars say that's fine. The one who doesn't raise an issue, he can move across, he's left alone. The problem is with, and when you look at all of these hadiths, are people who go and make a song and dance about it, who now, from the rooftops, are shouting, Islam is a problem, it's wrong, I've got these doubts, this, that, and the other. He is a problem. So he is now arrested. You have made certain public allegations. Take the example of the one as an employee, you leave a company. The one who decides it was wrong, I did my research, I made a mistake, I've worked for whatever years, I want to leave. He leaves, moves on. Nobody really cares much he's moved on, he works with another company. But the one who decides to leave and then starts publishing stuff against it, starts attacking it, slandering it, this company is this, malpractice, publicly in society, now that there's danger to that company. One person can't bring four down, but it can, the butterfly effect or that snowball effect can occur. So it can cause massive reputational problems, uncertainty for existing employees, even people observing outside that he's been there. So he's quite credible when he's saying, yeah? So he's now brought in, questions are posed. You've made these allegations, you're saying there's a problem, Muhammad is this, Islam is that, there is this, whatever. Justify them. Otherwise it's slander, it's abuse. You're now creating the potential for attacking your entire state. It's treachery, it's treason. The state structure is built on this. Its credibility is built on this. As it spreads its ideas around the world, and there's internal people making these claims. If they are justified, no problem. If you can convince us that we are wrong, we will change it in the entire thing, we will dump Islam. The verses Fatu bi Surah Mithlim, bring a chapter like the Quran is what? If somebody brings it, we, if we are sincere, would have to dump Islam. And that they've broken the challenge. So if this is God, and his miracle is broken, then it can't be from God. Yeah? He's given the opportunity. Some scholars give him a week, some give him a year, they'll discuss with him. Either accept your mistake, go back, or if you're going to carry on asserting it, even then, he's mistaken, you'll say, okay, not a problem, you did all what you did, but we'll forgive you. Behave. If he refuses, he's done what he's done, and he still digs his heel, I refuse to change that, I'm going to carry on, and he can't justify it, okay, you have to apply the capital punishment. Make sense?
So I just wanted to have a question. I had a question regarding the millet system which you... I never knew about that. The millet system, the Ottoman millet system. So
it's not the Ottoman, it applied from the Prophet's time.
Yeah, I've never...
Jews lived in their communities.
No, I've heard of the treaty and the ability, but the idea that you had to declare yourself whether you're this or this, even coming from Muslim faith, that's new to me. I never knew that. Because this is just my personal philosophy that I always thought that I'm never going to teach my child to be Muslim. I'm going to teach him to study all the religions, and you decide. And I'll criticize him to tell me why he
It's a good approach.
That's what I...
You should incline that I think this is the truth.
Yeah, I would say this is why I will
totally randomly go out there.
No. I will tell him why I will tell him or her why I believe what I believe. But the thing is, I want him or her to stand on their own feet. That's my.
And they have to, because conviction means what?
Yeah, of
it
course.
Doesn't mean blindly. I trust my dad,
exactly,
and I'm just going to follow it. That isn't conviction.
Yeah, you're actually a hollow Muslim. You're just Muslim on just by name, a label. That's it.
It does raise an interesting theological question. Just as an aside, that when it means Muslim who submits, who has iman. Iman means you have conviction.
Yeah. And if
can you have conviction just by trusting?
Yeah.
Or does conviction develop once you've thought about it, reflected? I'm certain I can.
Yeah.
And then if someone hasn't done that, is he really have iman? Is he even a Muslim?
I'm sure there's ikhtilaf on this, but what I wanted to ask was, just based on what I've told you, the thing is like, with this approach, I do understand there's certain consequences. For on the day of judgment, they could say, oh, you didn't teach me Islam properly. But, you have to say, no, I actually gave you the basics. You were left to make your own decision. Like, what are your thoughts on that sort of thing?
Those allegations are valid because you have a duty as a parent to get your child to reflect, to think, to understand, and facilitate that.
Yeah.
A child
if you've done your facilitation.
If you've done all that, now whatever he becomes, and now post-puberty is on him.
Yeah.
If he believes, he doesn't believe, that'll be his accountability.
Yeah.
And I had an interesting discussion with a friend. His son's about 17, 18, he's gone really wayward into drugs and all that. And I've always had the view that we have a responsibility as parents, and Islam is right, he should really head in that direction. And he's gone off, drifted some weird direction. His comment was really thoughtful. It's almost like I ran into a wall. I was giving him all my stuff. And then his answer is just like a brick wall. That, why are you so worried? If he's exploring all that and he's drifted off in that direction, Allah will ask him, why? And if he can answer all those questions with sincerity, oh Allah, I tried to figure it out, I did my best, and I ended up in shirk, or I ended up in Greek philosophy, or in wherever, is that a big problem for his akhirah? It's the sincerity that he's thought about it, he's genuinely got there, he did his best, all questions can be answered, he comes out fine. Is Allah going to, if he's just, punish him for that? Whereas compare the guy, my dad's a Muslim, I'm a Muslim, and now he gets on with life, he never even gives it a second thought, and dies with the label of Muslim, he's going to get eternal paradise. It doesn't sound right, does it? Just because he adopted blindly as a label, and this guy made his best effort, but he didn't conclude. So hence I think each person on their hadith that they'll get their own individual judgment. Allah will not be unjust to anybody.
There's Sheikh Hamza Yusuf, he did mention that exactly what you mentioned. So Sheikh Hamza Yusuf was of the opinion that people who are born, or who are raised because of whatever environmental factors, they've been swayed away from the religion or distorted from their whatever, right? Even if they've never heard of Islam, etc., it's not that they will never ever, they'll always be in hellfire, because he used the ayah in Surah Al-Baqarah, I think verse 22, where he talks about the creations, etc., and then it says, and do not commit shirk once you know, أَنْتُمْ تَعْلَمُونَ, once you have acknowledged.
Yes.
So this is what he said, and so because we live on a consistency principle, what we believe when we were young, we consider to be the haqq, for instance, that's the truth. So it's very hard to sometimes look down and question it further. So if he can justify that, he will be able to say, yeah. So that's Sheikh Hamza Yusuf, and I agree with that.
I agree with that as well.
Wasn't there a scholar who said that some people will be tested on Yawm al-Qiyamah if they weren't presented with a religion?
Okay, let's hold that. We can do questions. I just wanted to squeeze in one other. There were a few others, but I think we've spread ourselves a little bit. This week, Cameron, Theresa May, they're talking about passing new legislation of countering extremists. Last 10 years they've been countering terrorists. Now they're moving on to what's called extremists. And part of that they're saying is that a lot of youth don't believe they're British, or they think they're Muslims or Pakistanis, or there's confusion. They need to get this sorted out. So the question, are you British, are you Muslim, or are you a British Muslim? What kind of answers are we going to get? British. Show of hands. Just British. Okay. Okay. Muslim and just Muslim. Show of hands.
I'm Jew.
Just Muslim.
Okay.
And British. Okay, one person. And British Muslim. Show of hands.
Muslim British.
Or Muslim British if you think the priority is important. Muslim British. Show of hands. Most of you. And the ones who haven't showed their hands, what are you?
Just Muslim.
Oh, okay, so you're the middle one. Two of you, just Muslim. And at the back?
Muslim and human.
Muslim and human. Oh, okay. What do you understand by British? Who wants to have a quick go? When they say, I'm a British Muslim, what do you understand by that?
We get British rights, therefore we are British.
We get British rights, we're British.
I live here, I grew up here, my parents grew up here. I don't know.
You live here, parents grow up here, so that makes you British. Okay, that's understandable.
When you say you're British, I think you mean that you agree with the British ideology, the way of life of Britain.
Ah, okay. To be British means you actually accept a certain way of life, or you believe in a certain way of life.
I don't agree with that. You can be British on basically anything. I mean, Britain is all I know. I came here when I was 5, but it's all I know. So I'm British, and I'm a Muslim, so that's why I say I'm British Muslim.
Okay, sure.
I would disagree.